Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Very good afternoon, good evening. On behalf of Shared Services Forum, warmly welcome each one of you to second Digital Leadership E-Summit 2021. All the people who have joined through our web portal, Shared Services Forum, people who have joined through Facebook, joined through YouTube, joined through other social media platforms are warmly welcome. Besides, who have logged into this Zoom session. My name is Rakesh Sinha. I'm the co-founder for Shared Services Forum, and it's a privilege to host you all today for this intellectual conversations which we are going to have shortly. We have a couple of sessions lined up for today. We have a CIO panel, as we call it, and I think we have some extremely recognized leaders who are going to share their experiential perspectives, insights, how they have gone about driving this digital DNA for the business. And there's a very interesting acronym, which is part of this entire discussion going to be, is IDEA. And as you would have all seen it, IDEA stands for information, decision, experience, and architecture. So the conversations will be pretty much around that. A quick brief about Shared Services Forum. I'm sure the people who have logged into the various social media platforms or who are going to watch it later on the portal are quite aware of who we are, but just as a formality, I would like to share. Shared Services Forum is about 11 years old organization. We have the vision to disseminate knowledge into multiple areas, looking at from the business services, business processes, business transformation point of view. And we look at multiple ways of doing this knowledge dissemination through the sessions like these, the events. We do a lot of research. So there's a research desk which looks in terms of doing the publication, survey, articles, and so on and so forth. We have a quarterly journal by name Process Edge. We also do recognize the great contribution by the organization or the leader, and we have an excellence awards and recognition for the organization, as well as some of the stellar achievements by the leader in this industry. And we look at cutting across multiple functions, may it be looking at the business services or business processes, or it could be looking at finance and accounting, HR, IT, procurement, and so on and so forth. So typically the enterprise services, as we call it. And last but not least, a lot of community creation where we have separate conversations happening among the peer group, maybe in Bangalore or in Pune or in Mumbai or in Delhi, and so on and so forth. So we create some of that peer group conversations. In the last 11 years, we have been fortunate to have more than 500 participating people, leaders, organizations sharing their knowledge and their success stories, and beyond success stories, even the failures, which becomes very relevant and pertinent for the people to learn from each other. Coming specifically today agenda, I think, as I said, today's agenda has two folds. We have a 4:30 to 5:30. I know we are running behind by a couple of minutes. A session, which is a CIO panel session, and I already see some of my co-panelists for the CIO panel already appearing on the screen. So we will pull it very soon them for the discussion. After that, we have an interesting session coming from Dr. Lopa Mudra Basu on information risk management in a connected world, a paradigm shift. So that is what we're going to talk around 5:30 to 6 p.m. and then we'll close this session. Stepping back to look at this whole the topic itself and this whole redefining the digital and more talking from a DNA of the business point of view, if you have to see, I think there's a great saying from George Westerman, when he talks about when the digital transformation is done right, it's like a caterpillar is turning into a butterfly. But if it goes wrong, it's all about you're creating faster running caterpillars. So it becomes very important that it is just not about falling into that same trap of uh, doing a lot of digital and digital technologies, but how to really make it really more meaningful for your organization, and also making sure it is more future proofing some of the requirements. I think a couple of years back, pre-pandemic, we used to talk a lot about future readiness. And now the last 2 years have actually pushed us not to just keep thinking about it, but it is now here and now kind of a thing. And I think what we used to talk about digital natives and digital immigrants, now everybody was pushed to become in a way today digital natives, if I can say. And they are now looking at all the aspects of collaboration and digital and so on and so forth. Now, digital as a term is being referred by different organizations, leader in a very different context. We have seen sometimes people talking digital or relating it only with digitization, while there has been a big report which was given by Shared Services Forum to say how we see digital versus typically a digitization or an automation. So certainly there's a strong connect of this technology along with overall this whole digital journey. But today we don't want to dive into just digital, and I will be looking forward to the conversation as well. I think the idea is to see how we create or redefine this, the DNA of the organization, which is digital in the nature and very different. And to do that, there are a lot of different thing which is required. It is just not about the right kind of technology. It of course starts from the right kind of a strategy and a sponsorship, to looking at how you bring the alignment with the organization, the fit for purpose, etc., etc. So I think that element becomes very important, where it becomes more widespread and enterprise wide, if I have to say that. And I think there are three specific terms which we use as a part of our conversations, or a framework we say is that if you really want to make that digital DNA of an organization, you should look at that management drive, and management drive in terms of the top down, but connecting with the environment in which you're operating, or also connecting with the customer expectation. So you have your own management drive and a sponsorship, which is very important from a top down point of view, and provide the right kind of a governance. It is not just left to a IT leader to drive it, or it is just not left to somebody in a specific function to drive it, and so on and so forth. How that governance and the sponsorship becomes important. So management drive is one important thing. The second is an organizational alignment, in terms of, it is not a siloed approach. How it is seen, end to end, how it is seen from the culture point of the organization, and there's a connect to that, or there's an end-to-end view of it, not looking at a piecemeal approach, and so on and so forth. In fact, that's another interesting dilemma people look at in terms of the speed and the scale. And if you broaden the scale too much, there's a challenge. The speed comes down and it becomes again a challenge. If you fasten it, the problem is, you lose the scale, it becomes a piecemeal. So the right balance becomes very important, and making sure there's an organizational alignment becomes a very important aspect as a part of it. Last but very critical piece, of the third bucket, I will say, is skill development. So management drive, organizational alignment, and skill development. And skill here is, if I really go back, and I've been talking to some of the people and saying that we are having a very strong digital strategy, and I asked them a question by saying, do you know really how many digital natives or digital immigrants you have in your organization? Do you know how many people really understand this term digital? Do you know how many people really understand the terms like, what is the difference between an IA and AI, which is intelligent automation, and artificial intelligence? And sometimes they will interchangeably use it, or sometimes digital is just seen as an automation, as I was talking about. So what is the level of appreciation of the organization is important, and then creating some skill programs to say how they appreciate about how to look at a big data, how to look at cyber resilience. And cyber security and resilience is becoming a big requirement or a challenge in the current context, particularly from the anywhere operations point of view. So looking at that aspect of that skill, and that, bringing that digital skills to create that digital culture, and then creating that organizational alignment, and finally providing that on top the management drive. These three things works together to really build that digital DNA. but we'd like to hear more from the panel conversations and their experiences, their perspectives, and across the areas of this information, how to look at the whole information security paradigm, how they look at the decisions making. Today, there are a lot of new age technology which talks about I can disrupt your decision making itself. How agile your decision making is, and how robust it is, given the kind of the input which comes from big data and so on and so forth. So the decision making becomes one part of it. And finally, experience is a very important dimension. We all know, and it's nothing new, but the difference is now it has become more pertinent. It is not now only for planning for it. Efficiency is many times digital is seen more by saying, I want to drive efficiencies, I want to drive effectiveness. And up to that, we have seen many organizations limiting it to it, while the experience becomes now a very much a starting point. By saying what is that kind of an experience we are going to impact or a change is very critical. Today, we all as a consumers, we have our own behavioral shift in terms of how we look at everything. Today, we want everything on our mobile, and the way it has changed in the last 2 years, it is like, it's a sea change. Actually, I use the term in one of my articles in Economic Times to say it's an ocean change, not even a sea change. And that's where the whole idea of this experience becomes very critical. Last but not least, how you really create that robustness around it. It is not responding to the emergency today because people are talking about collaboration. So let's create something and let's do for it. It is about how robust it is, how agile it is, how secure it is, how scalable it is, and at the end of the day, how your digital strategy really connects back to the creating that competitive edge and delivering the success. I think that's something which we have to look at from a digital DNA of the organization point of view. And with this, I will pass it on to a very seasoned leader who has played multiple roles across the kind of domains, industry, companies. Rajneesh Virmani, I think he doesn't need a full introduction. Of course, and which is all this speaker pack has been put into the in the Zoom session, as well as it's already in the YouTube. It is in the Facebook and all other places. But I just want to still pick one or two quick points of Rajneesh's profile. If you have to just quickly talk about him, Rajneesh is a managing partner India for Positive Momentum. I personally met Rajneesh first time when he was my customer in Aviva, and he was the CEO of Aviva Global Services. While my colleagues knew Rajneesh for years and decades, from his multiple roles I was talking about being, and multiple geographies playing that role across industries, financial services, insurance, telecom, travel, credit cards, etc. Being into a CXO role for more than a decade and a half. That's a kind of an experience we have, ladies and gentlemen. So I will pass it on to Rajneesh to take the panel conversation ahead. So over to you, Rajneesh, and welcome you.
Many thanks for those kind words, Rakesh. Am I audible? Just checking before I start. Excellent. Thank you so much. And by the way, a brilliant idea of creating information, decisions, experience, and architecture. So I don't know who coined that phrase, but I was quite impressed. I thought it was well done. So the themes, folks, today that we have to talk of is moving up the digital maturity, like was mentioned by Rakesh. Redefining the next generation organization. What kind of DNA do we want? And what kind of growth patterns are we looking at from a digital maturity perspective? How do we measure digital maturity as an example? So I guess those are some of the questions that we are going to speak of in the panel discussion. We will endeavor to the best of our ability to keep it very practical and talk about the actual instances around where we have applied this philosophy and so on and so forth. In fact, maybe from a CIO perspective, CIO is now center stage, by the way. There is no option there. So CIOs are center stage. Technology is being implemented and executed not for the sake of, hey, this is the latest piece and this is looking sexy, etc., but from a business point of view. So from a CIO perspective, maybe idea could also mean innovative designs and efficient architecture. So Rakesh, with your permission, I tried to be creative as well and built in the idea through another lens, through another perspective. Information is becoming a commodity. Decision tools are on the rise. Used to be big data once upon a time, but now we talk of AI, ML, etc. Experience, both from a customer point of view and also from an employee perspective. What kind of people are we looking for internally within an organization? How is the consumer thinking changing? Let me talk a little about three clients that I have without naming names, or maybe even if I do, actually, it's open space, open market. These examples are already in open space. But being a consultant myself, how are people adopting digitization to the hilt? So the three changes that I've seen which are happening, and I'll wait for the other speakers to give in their own respective examples and enrich the discussion even more. But the three things that I've noticed, one, of course, from a shared services platform perspective, the biggest dilemma is how do we go forward? Are we going to have a hybrid environment? Will people continue to work from home or will they come back into office? Looks quite likely. The industry seems to be pointing at a hybrid environment. So how are the video, say Zoom as an example, how is Zoom adapting to that? And so one of the examples, because actually Zoom is a client of mine as well, how these guys have figured out that, hey, when you have a few people who are at home and a few people in office, the few in office, of course, are all small pictures in a small area because everybody is sitting around one camera zone. Whereas the people who are at home get one block, so to say, off the screen to themselves. And therefore, the guys who are on, in the office are not quite liking that. Now, taking that as a feedback from the customer, Zoom has come up with a wonderful innovation using AI ML, by the way, but coming up with an innovation saying that all pictures from even within the room are going to be taken on and shown as equal participants in the meeting. Brilliant. But it just tells you as to how the environment is changing, how the technology drivers are adapting to the situation and making sure that they adapt to the consumer need. By the way, not just the employees, but the customers also are at their homes. So if you look at the industries like healthcare, if you look at industries like education and so on and so forth, the whole pattern of the consumer being delivered a service at the residence itself is changing. So that's a second example. Third example, e-commerce. While e-commerce itself has grown and grown pretty large, it's become more and more of a V-commerce now. And so one of my clients, for example, is in the used car sale business. People are buying old cars, used cars over videos. You see the car through multiple dimensions and you're happy, paying thousands of rupees to buy that car without physically touching the car already. In fact, overseas in UK, I hear people are buying houses like that now. So real estate is being sold over just video calls and video. So the property dealer goes about showing on a camera where the, what nook and cranny exists within the house. And people are willing to put in $100,000 more and more based on that. So e-commerce has grown not in terms of the width, but also in terms of the depth. It's more v-commerce, I call it. Okay, enough about me. Let me talk and get you through to your speakers for the day. We have Jasmine, we have Manoj, we have Viral. Should we let Jasmine speak first? Jasmine Gorimar has been the digital transformation expert at Mahindra Group. She's handled numerous jobs. I'm not going to go through all the jobs, but she's handled e-commerce and digital marketing at GSK as well. So wide experience she brings to the table. Jasmine, over to you. Share some examples with us. We'd love to hear your perspective on the topic.
Absolutely. Rajneesh, thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. I hope I'm audible to everyone right now. But
yes, you are.
Thank you. So talking about innovation, talking about digitization, we need to first ask ourselves, is digital innate within everything we do? And if we're talking of digital transformation, is it all about digital transformation, or are we saying business transformation now, right? Because invariably what digital transformation yields is a business transformation. So we're not just talking about digitization or the old-fashioned doing, automation, RPAs anymore. We're talking about creating value through experiences, right? Your business, your companies become from people, for people. When I say from people, it's your employees. And when I say for people, it's your customers, right? If your from people are happy, which is your employee experience is great, your for people get impacted, which is where your product, it's reflected in the products you create and deliver. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a fantastic phase for the digital and tech industry. The pandemic has mandated certain shifts. I wouldn't say mandated, I should take that back. It's more like fastened it up, right? The past year, we've seen so many transformation take place across people's lives, across age groups. So we've even seen women as old as 80 or 85 who've never used their phone wisely, making orders, using e-commerce platforms, digital payments online. And my family elderly have done that. So yeah, what are we talking about? Is it just digital or business transformation? Over to you, Rajneesh. Thank you.
Sorry, I was on mute. Wonderful. I was saying we'll take that as a cue as we move forward for further questions and answers. Let me quickly introduce our next speaker, Manoj Srivastava. Manoj is our travel IT expert. So he's been in the travel industry for quite some time, over 22 years now. He's been a winner of the Next 100 CIOs, the CIO 500 list, and working in airlines, airports, etc. Currently, he's the VP IT in EaseMyTrip. So Manoj, over to you.
Thank you, Rajesh, for your introduction. And I'd love to talk about a little bit about digital transformation of this forum. Thank you for inviting me. Let me go back a little bit, in our earlier days, what happened earlier, we call it computerization, in any organization doing the application development or infrastructure management, that's called computerization. Then after we call automation, then everything revolves around the automation. Now we talk about digital, we talk about digitization. So I agree with Jasmine because digital is a journey, no doubt about, but most important factor is business transformation is important. When we talking about in board meeting, so everybody say, why we require digital? Is it really going to be add value? And now internet have a lot of discussion. Which portion need to digitize? Which portion needs to correct the thought? Then we came across, yes, we can do in this particular area because we are traditional dealing with the customer. We are doing internal stuff, doing the manual work. So all those areas we can transform in digital. And now we can get the real value out of it. So we can plan it, we can execute it, and we can deploy it. So again, is a measurement, is a kind of ROI, is creating real value to the customer or internal customer. That's the measurable, number one. It's not like say we other organization doing digital, so we can also have digital. So likewise, we started journey and evolving all those application, in-house application, which is customer-centric application moving in the cloud. And one by one, all those, we transform in digital journey. Now is ongoing. I'm not saying we stop it here. This is an ongoing process, and we, as much as we possible, we can digitize our environment, in-house application as well as customer-centric application. So yes, that's going to be last 18 months we found because of pandemic, the nature of job and nature of IT landscape change. People are working from home, people are working from anywhere. So that is a other challenge, how to connect those people in a one step. And same time, the biggest challenge is data security. Because when kind of job, kind of organization we have to keep the customer data, and the customer data is very, very important because when you have a global and you need to be protect the customer data, and not only protect, you have to get certification done, whether it's a PDP or Indian data protection policy or maybe GDPR. So that's again challenging job to how to protect the customer data in and make sure your business partner or any other organization they cannot access. That's we can define the customer, digital journey. I'm audible?
Yes, Manoj, go ahead.
So that's all. If you have any specific question, I will answer that.
Absolutely. We'll catch you with a lot of questions subsequently. Yeah. And I'm sure there'll be questions that will come from the audience as well. But before that, we have Viral Davda. Viral is the CTO for National Commodity and Derivative Exchange. Strong expertise in trading, clearing, settlement, risk management systems, and so on. So talk of the variety that the speakers bring on the table. Viral, over to you.
Well, thanks, Rajneesh. I think Jasmine and Manoj both have emphasized on what is digital, how is it different from digital transformation. Business imperative is important. So let me just put some other topic because this has been already discussed about. I'm just reading one of the management consulting article, and it was saying about 78% of digital transformation projects actually fail. Right. So I think that's something that we need to be aware of, that, where should we start? What are the criteria that we should ensure that when we get into a digital transformation journey, our digital transformation journey is actually giving us the result which business requires. So I think that is one area that all the executives are supposed to be very concerned about, and at the same time, make sure that relevant checkboxes are ticked. Digital transformation today does not remain in the technology kitty anymore. I think digital transformation today is one of the top 3 agendas of CEOs. That was also one of the report that I was reading, right? That was so there's a board level discussion now, is no longer remaining to tech alone. So executive buy-in, looking it from a customer perspective, finally at the end of the day, what are we trying to achieve? Are we just trying to do digital transformation because everybody is doing digital transformation? Or is it something for us that we will gain out of, right? So that, I think that defining that objective along with your management, having it a part of the executive strategy, putting it as a KRA, not only of the tech, but of the organization, including the CEO, all these factors are very important, and that has to be measured at the board level, because these are not small. As I said, I know, as Rakesh was also kind of pointing, this is different from automation, right? This has significant amount of capex investments involved. So this has to be monitored at the board level. And today, I think many organizations, tech executives are a part of board committees. So I think these certain areas or certain pillars are very important when you start your journey towards digital transformation. If you have your foundation right, then the road becomes a lot easier. And this is a journey, and this is not one project you executed and said, okay, oh, fine, I'm done with it, my digital transformation is over. That doesn't work that way, right? It's a journey, and we need to have a very strong foundation. The culture, the DNA of the organization, and this is what we're discussing today, has to be changed. And that will ensure that the ownership, secondly, is very important. This is not a tech ownership alone. While the accountability can be of tech, the responsibility alone is not tech. If the responsibility is given only to tech, and the CTO and the CIO is told that is your baby, you execute, it is definitely going to fail. I'm using stern words here, but by my experience, that is the outcome that most of the digital transformation project alone executed by tech handles into. And I've personally, obviously will speak about a couple of projects that we have done at the exchange where the ownership itself was divided and the KRAs itself was given to the business executive rather than tech, of a digital transformation project, and which was super successful, right? So I think that those are the key areas that we all need to understand. It is this is a new way of doing business. This is not a tech imperative anymore. Over to you, Rajnish.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Viral. So I think we've laid the foundation for a wonderful conversation, and using the pointers that you guys have all spoken of, let me ask a couple of, I would say, well, not necessarily silly questions, but provoking questions. I have to provoke your thinking, right? So the other day I heard a term which was being used, that we will not need hierarchies anymore, we will need hierarchies. So the entire organization is becoming more and more matrixed and flat. You really don't need an organization structure. So let me provoke your thinking, guys. How do you feel about this? Do you feel that when we talk of redefining the next gen organization, does the new DNA have any organization structure at all, or we don't need really an organization structure because of the distributed workforce, because of the interconnected workforce, because of I mean, all the dimensions that you guys spoke of. So is there is the organization chart becoming a dinosaur?
Let me answer. You rightly pointed out, traditional organization chart definitely should have some place for digital, footprint. So we are not created as of now, but what happened today, with the approval of board, we created one ecosystem where each department, we identify the person who is digital, who understand the future. I'm not saying the technology. I'm talking about some business value going to be added on the digital way. So we identify the people from each department, make them in one single consortium internally, and any kind of digital project, basically that validated by those people. And once all the department, stamp it and agree on that, then we present on the board, this is a digital, ecosystem we want to implement in a couple of months or couple of years or whatever roadmap we have. So in another word, what we are trying to say, we not involve each people in the organization. We have selected people, and the selected people we can add in organization chart, and probably that's going to be a permanent feature of the organization, next organization, I must say.
Anybody else?
Okay, maybe I can go next. So I've heard the terminology of hierarchy, if I'm right, for the very first time. And I must say that I totally resonate with the thoughts that Viral has shared earlier. And let's take a step back, right? Why do digital transformation projects really fail? The first part is governance. simple thumb rule, people need to work with each other. Hierarchical organization creates silos. Simple as that. That's why we're moving towards whatever we call as hierarchy or whatever that is. Second, any digital transformation project must have a sustenance in place. So whilst you're doing UI, UX, you're talking about bringing in emerging technologies, you're talking about how you're doing an outside-in analysis, an internal analysis to see where you currently fit and where you need to get headed. You also need to understand there is a sustenance angle to it, where governance plays a strong place. Now, when I say governance, what does that mean? Who's, of course, the whole Rocky matrix of it and all of that. But I'm talking about which functions get involved. And I did also mention that digital needs to be innate within the function itself. So then you ask yourself, what exactly are you doing? Are you doing digital transformation, which is largely misunderstood as digitization, or you're doing a business transformation? If you're doing business transformation, you have the functions taking the lead. And that's where a successful digital transformation project starts, with leadership buy-in, with having a sustenance model in place, with having a roadmap over the next 3 years, understanding who your stakeholders are and what they want, the very fundamentals of design thinking in action, before you even go and develop a product or develop or implement a strategy. Understand where we are, where we want to go, right? How will the market respond? Do you know what kind of risks are out there? Are we agile enough to say, hey, can we review the strategy after a year? Do we have the skills and capabilities? Again, coming back to the governance I was talking of. Do we have the skills and the capabilities to manage that change should that happen? Do our stakeholders who are sitting at the CXO positions, are they capable of understanding the sensitivity of it? And moreover, these are just the basics. If we don't have leadership buying into these projects, you're going to have another priority. This is going to be missed. And again, another one of those projects. But as I mentioned before, it's not a digitization. It's digital transformation. And of course, hierarchy-wise, yeah, it has to be flat. People have to work with each other. Just because I'm in digital doesn't mean I don't talk to my IT team or I don't talk to my finance team cross-border. Over to you. Thank you.
Yeah. Got it. I genuinely feel the organization chart as it was depicted a few years ago is probably on its way out. But you guys are saying something similar. Viral, you are wanting to add something?
Yeah, I would just, I would take this a little differently. I would say that hierarchy would still exist. This is my personal view. But the hierarchy that you're talking about, Rajneesh, is pretty much in action, has been in action. It's just that this terminology has been probably coined. It's all about dynamic role authorization and decision making, right? You're empowering a certain set of people for a certain specific purpose and making them do things, right? That's what we are all talking about in hierarchy. That, you know, the hierarchy is not stubble. It is not predefined. It is basically on the fly, and it is agile, and it is giving powers to people based upon the role that he is playing at that point in time. So, I mean, we have exercised this, and I'll give a couple of example in the couple of transformation projects that we did. We actually had a steering committee defined wherein we pulled in people from various functions and then said that, okay, you are the lead of this function, and probably that role is a CEO's role as far as the project is concerned. So while the hierarchy is still there, from the project execution and success perspective, I have given him and empowered him to a level of a CEO because he is independent. We have given him the budget and we have given them the powers. He has then formed his team. He has taken up the resources and he has executed the project right from the scratch, as if he's building a new organization for himself. So excellent. That's how I think the hierarchy and the dynamic role creation and empowerment will have to go hand in hand. And as all of us have finally concurred, this is not really a tech thing itself. It is cross-functional, though it has to be cross-functional, and cross-functional teams have to be formed together, empowered and executed.
That is very well described, Viral, and I agree with you. That is the new organization. There'll be dynamic roles. People will be pulled in from different departments, different functions, teams created, driving a project, and then back to where you were. So when we talk of a gig economy, it's not just from the outside world. People are coming into the organization, do your piece, and go out. But it is also within the organization itself. Create these little gigs and then disperse. Create these little gigs and then disperse. That, I think, is the new way of working, and not necessarily the classical organization chart and and so on and so forth. Okay, good start to the question answer piece. Before I jump on ahead, maybe getting the participants involved as well, all the listeners. How do you want to get involved? Do you want to pose a few questions? I see one question, I think, showing up. Can I request the host to maybe put up a poll question? Let's get the audience involved a little bit more. And in fact, I would encourage the speakers also to please respond to the poll. So go right ahead, host, it's over to you. Here's the session 1 poll that you should be seeing on your screen. Wow. So 44% of you believe advent of pay-per-use as a service technology that's the reason. And demand in real-time plug-and-play approach is the second highest at 28%. I think the others are relatively small. I think integration is to be managed. Absolutely, I agree with that. Integration is to be managed at the ecosystem level. That also is true. Wonderful. Wonderful. Let me pose the next question then to you guys. We spoke about the org chart looking very different in the future as compared to, what about the profile of the people themselves? The E of the idea is experience. When we talk of the employee experience, not the consumer experience piece, we all understand is changing, the expectations are changing, and so on and so forth. What about the experienced employee? If you are and you are hiring managers, you're hiring by large numbers, all three of you, how do you handle the next set of employees? Are you hiring the next gen guys, the millennials? Or are you hiring the people with the larger experience? Because do you want an open mind? Do you want people to go in with an open mind and go ahead and execute and figure out without fear of failure? Or do you want to go through the bracketed route to say that this is, let me gain from the experience, but then for the experienced guy, it is very difficult to break the paradigms and come out and so on and so forth. So what is the industry preference? I guess your 3 responses itself will tell me on an average which way is the industry thinking. Viral, you're in the center screen for me, so you go ahead first.
Yeah, sure. So I think answer to this lies, there's a saying, you tell me how you measure me and I'll act accordingly. Right. So, I mean, it really depends on what type of a business are you in and what is the prerogative given to you as a business. Now, I would personally love to kind of hire, young millennials and, digital natives, which fosters innovation, as you rightly mentioned. But, we also have to kind of keep our business lights green. And, specifically talking about an exchange, which is infrastructure is a critical to nation in the national economy itself. You're not allowed to fail even for a second. Now, for that, you obviously need to have a separate team, experienced team, who can make sure that the light is green. And, the innovation part, the disruption part, something you go try new sandboxing kind of a technique. You hire people who are, young and enthusiastic, trying on new things, have different backgrounds, etc. So I generally would prefer going for a hybrid kind of a hiring, depending upon what type of a role that I'm planning to hire for. That's what my take is on this.
Impressive, very impressive thinking. What about the others, Manoj?
Yeah, also correct. So basically, my daughter is smarter than me. So we always encourage the fresh mind. fresh people, because the thinking is, new thinking is a new generation thing is very, very phenomenal. So I can see the out of the box thinking rather. So if you can say, of course we need experienced people. I can say in the ratio 25% people we can have a very good experience in the past, and rest of people we need a fresh-minded people, so that we can create an ecosystem with experience along with the fresh mind that give them very, very good result.
Okay. Okay. Jasmine, any thoughts?
Rajneesh, you know what's interesting? Your question itself defined two personas, and you defined an experienced person as someone being less rigid to change, and a millennial actually showing or having that agility. Let's look at it from an industry perspective, right? This is not a question of, hey, do I need stability or do I need agility, and how do I cope with change? If you look at senior people, right, who are more experienced, they prefer working with a young workforce, the millennials. And I'm saying so because I have done that research, leading an employee experience program out here. They prefer working with a young workforce who's agile, ready to push that extra page to make things happen, think outside the box, think non-traditional, right? Which an experienced mind need not get. So it's not a tug of war between knowledge and capability. It is actually bringing the two together, right? And that's what it should be. So you could have an experienced person with high agility too. Of course, that's really rare to find. But if you put a millennial, for example, someone with that agile mindset, that, the startups, that's how startups are so successful, right? They can just mold and shift and change into anything they want to. But if you bring that type of mindset into a really hierarchical organization, you fail, and that person will leave you very, very quickly.
Good.
So it
Good.
really depends where you are and what you want to do. If you want to manage operations stability, I do agree, keep some stable-minded people in there. But if you want change, you want to drastically move things, of course, whilst you need an experienced leader setting some direction, but you do need a energetic team. Now, whether that's the millennials or not, case to case.
Excellent. I love this discussion. I love the diversity of thoughts, because, well, that's what makes a good decision, right? That's what makes a good discussion around any table. So yeah, I'm glad that there are different perspectives coming in. Pranav from the audience has put in a question that says, if you see a flat digital organization in the future, what is the future of gig workers in corporate India? We did talk about the gig economy, and of course that's here to stay. And if anything, there is an external gig economy, and then there is an internal gig workforce as well, because the way the teams are going to work, pooling in teams, like that's exactly I think what we said. I think this was Viral's point, which got pushed to a slightly higher height, where we are talking of gigs being created, gig teams being created within the organization, and so on and so forth. Let me rephrase that question another way and pose that question to our speakers. What do you see? Very pointed question, and again provocative. What do you see as the percentage of full-time employees with organizations in the future? I'm going back, correlating to the themes. So one of the themes was, what is the next DNA, next gen DNA going to look like? What is the percentage of full-time employees that you foresee in an organization in the future? A totally digitally transformed organization. Do you see lots and lots of contractual, part-time, gig workers, or do you see still a whole lot of full-time workers? Just means you're still holding the baton for me, so go right ahead.
I'm totally in support of the gig economy. It depends what's the time scale. If you're saying beyond 10 years, I see a balance and an equivalent of both. You will need full-time employees, no doubt. They're the ones who are going to sustain the organization. But the skill required by those full-time employees will be drastically different from what you have today.
Yeah,
So
sure.
the skill sets are going to change, and they're going to change at a much faster frequency than what has happened in the past. So I mean, I'm talking about as quickly as every 3 years. The top 3 number, you've been saying digital transformation number 2 or 3. It might not be number 3 or number 1 or wherever it is, might not be even in the top 10 after 3 years. But yeah, keeping up with that skill will be important. The gig economy brings in a lot of agility to an organization, a lot of overhead that a permanent employee has is not something that the organization would need to bear if they had a gig economy. Strategies, business strategies are changing. The industry is changing. I mean, how do you cope with that change? You need that kind of skill sets in-house. You need that kind of products coming in, plugging in into your solutions, delivering those solutions to your overall business product. So gig economies no doubt play a critical role coming forward. But I don't see permanent employees going out either way. But yes, their skill sets will definitely be different from what it is today.
Great answer. Any other thoughts, Viral, Manoj?
Yeah, so my view is, let's say, last 18 months, entire business dynamic has changed. So I can see a lot of iteration in the people leaving the company, even now people are not interested to come on the back to a job. So full-time employee definitely is going to be value add in the future. But what is happening today is a very, very dynamic in nature. So I mean, I'm not very sure what is going to be next down the line 3 years. How manpower going to be established. Yes, there are a couple of things going on. Like say, most of organizations interested to take the certain resource from as a consultant and the freelancer and all those stuff. And after that, they see how business grow. And is totally dependent upon business. In business stable happening, they're going to be converted to full-time employee.
Okay. Viral, you are getting ready to say something.
Yeah, I was just, so I probably second what Jasmine just said. So essentially, we have to understand both of them brings different perspective to the organization, right? For gig economies, the contract workers essentially are very important for getting very specific things done. They come, they execute that to perfection. They are very focused to get that done, and then they move out, right? Full-time employees at the same time are important for the continuity and the sustainability of the organization. The belongingness that they bring in, probably a gig worker or a contract worker may not be able to have that because they are hired for a specific purpose, right? So I think both both type of employments are important. And as you rightly said, the ratio will over a period of time certainly change. Today, we are all looking at regular employees, right? We have not really, I'm sure the economy is now opening up for gig workers as well, but the ratio will certainly inverse in times to come, right? Well, we will have a lower number of full-time employees and more people with specific skill sets, specific project experiences coming in, executing the projects for the company. And that will also help the company to reduce their OPEX, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm working for our profitability, right? And I need very specific things to be done. I don't hire full-time employees. I just get people, get it executed, and that OPEX is gone from my P&L. So both of them will have to coexist, and we'll have to take on it on case-to-case basis.
Okay, wonderful. So I know I'm running out of time. I wanted to ask at least one more question linking up to the other theme, digital maturity. And the next gen organization is going to be moving up the digital maturity. I don't know how you guys feel about digital maturity. How do you measure digital maturity in the first place? Any ideas or any thoughts there?
Okay, let me give it one initial go on behalf. When we say digital maturity, in what context? Are we talking about in people skills? Or are we talking about our architecture? Or are we talking about maybe it's a it's a technology company, and then you're talking about the digital maturity of the product. What part of the three are we talking about, Rajneesh? I'm not very clear.
So that's for us to define. That's for us to define. I genuinely feel, based on the discussion we had in the earlier part of this forum, is that technology is not for the sake of technology. Technology is not, hey, this is the sexiest, this is the latest piece, so let me just go for it. It is to say, what is the business need? And what am I trying to fulfill? And therefore, to my mind, at least, digital maturity, if I have to measure, organization A is more matured as compared to organization B in digital maturity, it cannot be a measure of who's got the latest technology. It is to say whose business model runs on whatever technology platform is considered to be the best suited for that area. That, to my mind, at least, if I were to add my perspective to the question, I'd say it is the business adoption of the technology rather than the technology itself. That would determine the maturity rather than the saying who has the latest toy in town.
Sure. I resonate with that, Rajneesh, totally.
Any other views, any contradictory views from the other two?
No, so Rajni, it's not really a contradicting view. I think when we say measure, it's important to define and then measure. And that's what we are trying to do over here. If you look at the way I look at this digital maturity is, let's define the digital maturity from my perspective first, and then we can say how I think we can measure organizations around that. So digital maturity, according to me, is the journey, the status of the organization in the journey of business transformation enabled by technology. So where are you in that journey? Based on that journey, we can basically categorize organizations into 3 or 4 categories, maybe. One is a set of organizations which obviously has automation. I think we have clarified that automation is not digital transformation, right? They may be having automation, but that automation is incidental. There was no clear strategy that we want to achieve this as a business outcome from this, right? So those are the type of organizations which are not really, they are incidentally automated, not really aware of digital transformation. That's the first category. Second category of organization who has a very, firmly defined, okay, we need to be digitally transformed. They are aware of what digital transformation is. They have defined the business imperative. They have defined their goal, but they are not yet executed any projects in that area. So they are in the middle. They are just trying to define, they are trying to adopt. And a lot of organizations today, fall in those categories because of this pandemic. Pandemic has actually forced them to do that, that they have to rethink the way they are doing business. So a lot of people are now hiring, and that's why you see suddenly the requirement of tech people have boomed, right? And they have crazy salaries and going off the rock just because of that, because everyone wants to do digital transformation, but they don't know how to start, but they want to do it. So they are now becoming aware, right? And they're formulating their strategies, and they are inculcating more people with their skill set to kind of do that for them. So that's the second category of organization. The third category of organization is basically who have actually experienced digital transformation. They have done digital transformation successfully, and they have kind of on the way to achieve that ongoing rotation, and it is sustainable rotation of those projects in digital transformation space. And the last category, which I call digitally mature, is that the culture itself is digital first. Their mindsets have changed, their org structures have changed. They have kindly adopted in their DNA that this is how the new business is going to run. And no, that's very clearly articulated. The systems are not silos. They're all talking to each other, is integrated, and the end customer is benefiting from those initiatives that the organization is taking. I think these are the four, according to me, categorizations that we can do in terms of digital maturity.
Excellent. Excellent. There is one more question before we close, and I want to respect the time. It's approaching 5:30. Nilesh Bhatia has put this question. There is a comment and then there is a question along with it. Digitization brings in a challenge. With technology becoming smarter day by day, machines are learning faster than humans. Sure. So the question I think he's asking is, human angle needs to be addressed in this digitization. What are your thoughts? Is that true? I think it's factually true. Of course, they need to. How do you propose to do this? Is there any suggestion that you may want to give? How do you protect the human angle as you go in your digital path?
So I'll probably go first here, Rajneesh. I think both of them will coexist. There is certainly a requirement where the thought process and the skill set of people needs to change. They need to be technologically more aware. And I'm not talking about tech people. I'm talking about person in finance. I'm talking about person in operations. I'm talking about person in business, right? So they should not feel that, probably let's say if I implement an RPA tool, that doesn't mean that the person who is doing manual job is going to lose their job. We have to train those people to adopt to various technologies and learn from there, right? And they can be, human mind is capable of doing a lot more than what robots can do. Robots can do tasks which are told to them multiple times without any error. That's the job of a robot or a code or a software, right? Human minds are intellectual person. They instruct softwares and robots to do what to do. I think people need to shift their gaze towards those kind of thinking. And one way to do that, and since we're talking about how do we address that challenge, is to basically conduct training sessions and make them aware about all of these. And this is what the practice that we follow, at least 2 Saturdays a month. What we do is, from a tech perspective, we conduct sessions with all the business users and burst all those buzzwords which are going around in the industry, right? And it's very dangerous because someday some CFO will come and tell you, yeah, Viral, you need to do this. They don't understand that term, whether that's relevant to us or not. So it's very important that you need to conduct those sessions and make them aware what that is. Is it relevant to us or not? And train them if required. So we have conducted a lot of training sessions of business users, on Power BI. We have done a lot of sessions on Automation Anywhere. Today in my company, automation is done by users, not by tech team. Reports are generated by users, not by tech team. We are using Power BI to generate the users. So a clearing and settlement person is generating his own report using Power BI. Technology team is nowhere involved. My job was to select the right tool, give the data in the data warehouse, and from there it is their call. It is their data, their call. They do the thing. So they are empowered now. So our job is to empower people and supplement technology. It is not that they are going to be replaced. I think that sensitivity needs to be managed and make them aware that you need to upgrade your skill set to be able to utilize this to your advantage.
Excellent. Excellent. Hey, I must say, thank you, Viral. These were absolutely brilliant thoughts. And you're reinforcing and over again the need for that business focus in the entire organization. If the sponsorship is not there, if that ownership is not there, things will not work. So thank you for your thoughts, Jasmine, Manoj, Viral. I think you guys have been absolutely wonderful. If I were to draw out 2 or 3 things, of course, the change that is happening is on for good. In fact, if anything, it is getting faster and faster pace. We can see 5 years, 10 years down the road, the DNA of the next-gen organization changing and changing dramatically. We spoke about during the course of the 1 hour or so, we spoke about the various elements of changes. Security is still a concern. Data security was pointed out as a concern. But in terms of the transformation projects failing, I think, Manoj, you brought out the fact that 78% of the project transformation fail. I don't know who, but it came out in the context. 78%.
I think Viral talking
Viral
about
brought that
75,
out.
right. But,
So 78% of the projects fail. Sorry, Manoj, you wanted to say something?
yeah, I want to add one more point because why is it digital 75% digital transformation is failed because of they are not doing proper homework. They are no due diligence about the project. That's why end of the day landed up the failed project. But that's why I reminded earlier point when we going toward digital transformation, any of the application definitely we can go in house due diligence first. Why is it really required or not? Then we can address the proper ROI. What we going to be add value or what customer going to add value here. So once you have this kind of roadmap, definitely your project will be succeed.
Manoj, while you hold the mic in your hand, there is a question from the audience. Has there been any new initiative in the travel industry lately? Would like to understand from Manoj if they have implemented any new technology in Ease My Trip.
Yeah, there are a lot
Customer
of things.
experience.
Absolutely, there are a lot of things is going on. In fact, during the pandemic, what did only Ease My Trip, offer any of the customer they can, take the refund online. None of the portal is, offering the online refund, but here we have a created ecosystem just to come on the website and you just submit your detail and no need to call the call center. Your refund will automatically fraction of second credit back to your account. That we have done wonderfully, and that's that's one of the area which we can say we have automated. Second, there are a lot of things is in a pipeline, and I cannot disclose, but in the coming days you can see the new Ease My Trip product, which is going to be really beneficial to the travel industry.
Excellent, excellent. Jasmine, any last word from you? I know you're coming close to the mic, so let me just check.
That was not the reason, but
okay.
Last words from me. Yes, I think AI ML is here to stay. Things are going to be more intelligent, more automated. You look at the millennials, they're fascinated by it. Social media will still expand, but at the same time, the balancing act will be on the data privacy, the security laws, the advancement in security, the technology in the security landscape, etc. So they both are a must need. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. This could have gone on for a long time, but I do appreciate that we are, in fact, if anything, 5 minutes over. So I'll close here, wearing my timekeeper hat as well. So we'll close. And it's my duty now to pass on the mic to Dr. Lopa Mutra Basu. Dr. Lopa is the advisor, Cloud Security Alliance for APAC Research Advisory Council. And she will speak on information risk management in a connected world. Is this a paradigm shift? So Lopa ji, over to you.